Les Raisins de la Mort, The Grapes of Death, from 1978, directed by Jean Rollin. This isn't a grape film. Get it? Anyway, pesticide chemicals sprayed in a French vineyard cause the workers and drinkers of the resultant wine to begin rotting alive and thirst for murder. If that description makes you want to watch the film, please be aware that although it's factually correct, the actual film is an exquisitely shot but completely illogical mess of barely sketched characters and nonsensical violence. Characters are named, maybe, but you'd be hard-pressed to remember anyone. People speak and have conversations, but seemingly talk around their situations in a series of increasing non-sequiturs, punctuated with surprise violence. The zombies, here, aren't flesh-eaters, they're just homicidal, and are completely aware of what they're doing despite being unable to stop themselves, just like the victims of the extreme horror comic Black Gas, which is essentially Crossed. Can the main character survive long enough to fulfill her poorly explained purpose? Or will she end up pulped by the grapes of death? I'm all for slow burn horror movies. I mean, one of my earliest childhood memories was watching Peter Weir's Picnic at Hanging Rock, and I realized that slow burn can mean contemplative, suspenseful, or lyrical, but what we have here borders on absurd. We're given a long film, filled with gorgeous photography and some ominous crowd scenes, but the story, and I use the term as loosely as I can, isn't so much loose as it is non-existent. The main character, Elizabeth, Marie-Georges Pascal, is traveling by train to the vineyard of her fiancé, Michel Herval. She strikes up an acquaintance with Brigitte, Evelyn Thomas, on the train, and man, let me tell you, Elizabeth's entire raison d'etre comes spilling out during their initial conversation like Jim Dalin's infamous Ghost House introduction.
We're here on vacation. My camper's parked out in the yard. I'm here with my brother and his girlfriend. Our sister Tina's with us too. My name's Jim Dallin.
There's a lot of terrified glances and not a lot of dialogue. And when dialogue appears, it's either crazed ravings or perfunctory info dumps, and that's only if it has anything to do with the plot. For example, there's a blind girl searching for her caretaker friend in the village, and Elizabeth takes her in, but doesn't let her know the horrible things occurring around them. Then, bang! She's more grist for the blood mill in a particularly bloody and absurd execution. How did she end up tied spread eagle on a door? Topless. You can feel Rollin saying, "Don't worry about the how or the why, here's some nudity and gore." Elizabeth is trapped in a car while an infected breaks in the window. What will she do? Why, she pulls a random gun from the glove box and shoots him. Why? How? That's not important. The art is what's important. Jean Rollin is notorious among the fans of Eurosleaze, the weird and the bizarre, for directing both hardcore pornography and softcore horror films. Ever hear of a little film called Zombie Lake? No? Well, it's not a good film. In fact, it may even be a stretch to call it a film. But it's kind of typical for Rollin's work. There's always a lot of soft, gauzy shots of the countryside, abrupt nudity, and nonsensical plots. Granted, Zombie Lake was originally a Jess Franco film, with the gratuitous underwater crotch shots to back it up, but the direction is pure Rollin. Anyway, Les Raisins de la Mort plays out like a cross between the plot of Georges Grau's Superior, Let Sleeping Corpses Lie, and the style, gore, and nudity of Armando de Osorio's Tombs of the Blind Dead. The use of pesticide as the source of the contagion isn't anything particularly novel, even at the time, and isn't very important to this film's message, but it's worthy of note 4 years after Let Sleeping Corpses Lie. Publicity at the time of release touted this film as France's first gore film, but barring a single hilarious instance, The gore is pretty tame. It does have the grungy 70s look that brings to mind Dawn of the Dead, and the fluids oozing from the infected look particularly mucousy. The barren landscapes and darkened village with the lurching townsfolk are quite atmospheric, but your mileage may vary depending on the film's overall dread factor. Currently streaming on Shudder. It was initially released on DVD in the US by Synopsis Films in the early 2000s, then again by Redemption Films when the licensing switched. Redemption then released the film on Blu-ray in 2013, although that release is getting slightly hard to come by. You should still be able to find it readily enough on the secondary market. Le Raisins de l'amour brings to mind the heyday of oft-times nonsensical, but nevertheless ominous, 70s horror, typified by Hammer, Amicus, and AIP. Lyrical to a fault, the film is a bit of a slog, but there are enough nuggets of greatness here to keep you entertained between guffaws at coincidences and non-sequiturs. Fans of Eurosleaze and horror should find enough here to like, but beware that Rollin is a wildly inconsistent director. So just his name, or J.A. Caesar, or Michel Gentile, or Robert Xavier on a film doesn't guarantee quality. Entertainment? Yes, whether that's from the incongruity of plot, nudity, or bizarre surreal imagery, but quality and entertainment don't always come hand in hand. I give this film a 3 out of 10.
Before we go, I just want to point out how bizarre the trailer is for this film. In many ways, I believe the trailer is more disturbing than the film itself. It has very strange editing, so that there's very little music. It's just a lot of sound effects and droning noises and very strange cuts between action and still and seemingly portentous images. It's very off-kilter. And I think that it may be far more effective in creating a sense of unease than the film is.
We're here on vacation. My camper's parked out in the yard. I'm here with my brother and his girlfriend. Our sister Tina's with us, too. My name's Jim Dallin.